When you close your eyes tonight and travel back with me to a world lit only by candles, I want you to imagine a quiet medieval village tucked between soft green hills, where the wind carried the smell of wood smoke and lavender, but also the quiet pressure of expectations that most people today would struggle even to understand. This is a story about beauty, not the kind found in paintings or embroidered tapestries, but the kind that was demanded, measured, judged, and sometimes painfully carved into the bodies of real men and women. And at the center of this story stands a young girl named Elena, whose life would become a window into the brutal but strangely tender world of medieval beauty rules. But before we begin her journey, I want you to picture one moment, a moment at the very end of her life that she could never have predicted. She is old now, her hair silver, her hands soft and worn like old linen. Children gather around her hearth, and she whispers to them something she learned slowly, painfully, courageously: beauty is not what they tell you it is. Beauty is what lets you breathe. Tonight, we walk back to the beginning of how she learned that. Elena was born in a small village near the river Tarlon, where everyone knew everyone's business, and everyone repeated the same rules, day after day, as if the world itself depended on them. A woman's hair must be hidden or braided. A woman's skin must be pale as moon milk. A woman's waist must be small enough to grip with two hands. A woman's eyebrows must be plucked thin and clean. A woman's smile must never show too much teeth. These rules drifted through the village like smoke, soft, invisible, but always there. Elena's mother, Emmeline, was gentle and kind, with a voice that hummed like river water. But she, too, had lived her whole life under these rules. When Elena turned 12, her mother combed her long chestnut hair and said softly, "People will watch you now. Be careful what they see." Elena didn't understand then. She only knew she liked climbing the orchard trees and running barefoot through the soft soil after rain. But the day she turned 13, the world shifted. Women watched her with curious eyes. Men studied her with a kind of passing expectation. And the whispers began. "She's too tanned. She has strong arms, like a farmhand. Her nose is a bit too wide. Her waist will need shaping soon." Elena would pretend she didn't hear. But she did. Every word. One evening, she sat by the river, looking at her reflection in the darkening water. The sunset lit the surface gold. The water trembled with the breeze, and so did her image. Her eyes looked too large. Her cheeks too round. She felt heavy, like she was slowly being sculpted by hands she couldn't see. A quiet voice drifted over the water. "You're looking at yourself like you're someone else." Elena turned. A boy stood there, 14, maybe 15, with soft brown hair and hands stained with dye. His name was Rowan. His family worked with fabrics, coloring wool and linen in small clay tubs behind their house. He was known for being quiet, thoughtful, and strangely gentle for someone who worked with chemicals that stained everything they touched. "I'm just thinking," Elena murmured. "About what?" She hesitated. No one ever asked her that. "About who I'm supposed to be," she whispered. Rowan sat beside her without asking permission. He had always been like that, moving through the world softly, as if afraid to disturb it. "You don't have to be anything," he said. "Only yourself." But in medieval times, that wasn't how things worked. Elena would learn that soon enough. The pressure grew as seasons changed. In summer, the sun browned her skin, and women clucked their tongues, offering powders of crushed chalk to fix the problem. In winter, her cheeks reddened from the cold, and her mother warmed thick mixtures of honey and milk to soothe them, whispering, "You must stay pale." Meanwhile, noblewomen in the nearby manor rubbed their faces with lead powder until their skin cracked like dry parchment. Some plucked their hairline back to achieve a high noble forehead, a practice that made Elena shiver. It was brutal. It was normal. It was expected. One day, when she was 15, the village seamstress measured her waist and sighed. "Too wide," she said. "We'll have to bind it." Bind it. With long linen strips that squeezed the ribs and belly until breathing felt like lifting stones. Rowan noticed her discomfort one afternoon when she came to his family's dye yard. You're walking strangely, he said gently. I'm fine, she lied. He studied her. Your breathing is shallow. She tried to straighten. It's nothing. It is something. She wanted to cry. She didn't. Instead, she whispered, they say I need to be smaller. Rowan's eyes softened. You're perfect as you are. No, she said. Not here. And that was the truth no one admitted out loud. Beauty in medieval times wasn't a choice. It was survival. It was status. It was marriage and respect and worth. For Elena, it became a shadow that followed her everywhere. As months passed, she was introduced to harsher traditions. Eyebrow plucking, done with thin bronze tweezers that pinched like angry insects. Hair oiling, thick and smelly mixtures meant to tame her curls. Complexion pastes, powdered bone, chalk, sometimes ground snail shells. Some rules were strange. Others were painful. All were suffocating. One day, her mother took her to a nearby town, where the market bustled with cloth, spices, fish, and gossip. There, Elena saw noble women with hairlines shaved nearly to the crown of their heads. Why do they do that? She whispered. High foreheads are a sign of wisdom, her mother replied. But Elena thought they looked frightened, like people who had been forced to give up pieces of themselves. The trip became a turning point. Not because of what she saw, but because of what she felt. The more she looked at others, the more she realized how much pain everyone had beneath their carefully arranged appearances. When they returned home, Rowan was waiting near the road, as if he knew she would need to talk. How was the trip? He asked. Strange, she whispered. Everyone looks like they're pretending. They are, he said simply. And I don't want to pretend. He smiled, soft, shy, approving. Then don't. It isn't that simple. I know, he said, but maybe one day it will be. That night, as she lay in bed, her waist still bound, her eyebrows still aching, she closed her eyes and imagined a world where beauty didn't hurt, where she could run through the orchard without worrying about her skin, where she could laugh loudly without being scolded for showing her teeth. Slowly, a quiet resolve formed in her heart. Not rebellion. Not anger. Just clarity. But clarity is dangerous in a world built on rules. As she grew older, the rules tightened around her like vines. Her mother began preparing her for marriage, a prospect Elena dreaded. Suitors asked about her dowry, her sewing skills, her household training, and of course, her appearance. She must stay pale, one man insisted. She must keep her hair long, said another. She must quiet her laugh, a third murmured. Elena listened. She nodded politely. She smiled softly. Inside, she felt herself fading. Rowan noticed before anyone else. You're quieter these days, he said one morning at the riverside. I'm tired, she whispered. Of what? She hesitated. Of being looked at, she said. Of being arranged. Of being shaped. Rowan looked at her with so much gentleness that she felt something loosen in her chest. You don't have to let them, he murmured. She turned away. I don't know how to stop them. You will, he said with certainty. I know you will. His belief in her was like a warm lantern in a cold winter room. Her moment of courage came unexpectedly. One evening, her mother sat combing her hair, long, beautiful, chestnut hair that everyone praised. You must never cut it, her mother said. A woman's beauty is in her hair. But Elena's hair felt heavy that night. Heavy with expectations. Heavy with silence. She reached up, hands trembling. Mother, she whispered, I want to choose my own beauty. Her mother froze. The brush slipped. The room held its breath. For the first time, Elena spoke her truth aloud. I don't want to pluck my eyebrows. I don't want to bind my waist. I don't want to hide from the sun. I don't want to be small or pale or quiet to make other people comfortable. Her mother's voice wavered. But the world. I want to live in it, Elena whispered, not shrink inside it. Her mother's eyes softened, and something inside her cracked, not in pain, but in recognition. She reached out and held her daughter's hand. I wanted the same thing once, she whispered. But I didn't know how. Maybe that was the moment everything changed. Not because the rules disappeared, they didn't. Not because the world grew softer, it didn't. But because Elena began to breathe again. And Rowan noticed. Your eyes are brighter, he said one sunny afternoon. I feel lighter, she replied. I've never seen you like this. I've never been like this. She stopped binding her waist. She let her skin darken in the summer sun. She kept her eyebrows full and natural. She laughed freely, showing every tooth. Some people judged her. Some whispered. Some stared. But others, quietly, secretly, envied her. Because freedom is contagious. And that is how the girl who once stared at her reflection with doubt slowly became the woman who would one day tell children, beauty is what lets you breathe. But her journey was only beginning. Part 1 ends with her heart open, her resolve growing, and her story unfolding like a slow, calm dawn over the medieval world. Part 2 will follow her as she faces real consequences, discovers hidden medieval beauty secrets, and makes a choice that will change her life forever. The morning after Elena chose to breathe freely for the first time, the village felt strangely new. Not because anything outside had changed, but because she had. The sun still rose over the same patchwork fields. The rooster still cried. The mill still groaned with turning grainstones. Yet as she stepped out of her cottage, her unbound waist moving with the soft rhythm of her breath, she felt as if she were walking into her own life for the very first time. It didn't take long for people to notice. Old Mistress Brune, the baker's wife, paused in the middle of arranging her loaves. Your hair is uncovered, she said sharply. Elena nodded politely, her voice gentle. Yes. Mistress Brune blinked, waiting for an apology that didn't come. And your waist? It's just my waist, Elena replied, not unkindly. The older woman stared at her as though she were witnessing something scandalous, but Elena simply smiled and continued walking, her heart trembling with nervous courage. Change, in medieval villages, was a stone thrown into still water, it never went unnoticed. Rumors began to drift from door to door, slipping into evenings like cold drafts. Some whispered she'd lost her senses. Others claimed she was rebelling against tradition, disrespecting her mother, or, strangest of all, trying to attract attention in the most unseemly ways. But even as words floated like thorns through the air, something else happened quietly. Women watched her. Not the loud ones, not the gossipers, but the tired mothers, the girls with bruised ribs from too tight bindings, the daughters whose eyebrows were plucked until their eyes watered. They watched her walk freely, breathe freely, exist freely. And in their eyes flickered tiny sparks of longing. Rowan, of course, saw the change most clearly. When she reached the dye yard that afternoon, he looked up from a vat of deep blue woad and froze. You look, he started, then paused, searching for the right word. Different, she offered. He shook his head slowly. No. You look like yourself. The warmth that rose in her chest surprised her. It was a soft warmth, like the glow of a hearth that had been cold for too many winters. But her newfound freedom came with consequences she hadn't expected. 3 days later, her mother returned from the manor with worry etched deeply across her features. Elena, she whispered urgently, Lady Catherine has heard about your changes. Elena's stomach tightened. Why does it matter to her? Because, her mother said, sinking onto the bench, they were considering you as a possible attendant for her daughter's wedding season. But now, everything was uncertain. Elena didn't know whether to feel disappointed or relieved. Being an attendant would have meant work, status, security, and more rules. More expectations. More shaping. Her mother saw the conflicted look on her face and sighed. I don't want to push you, she said softly. But opportunities are rare for girls like us. Elena took her mother's hands. I know, she said. But I want my life to feel like it belongs to me. Her mother's eyes glistened, but she nodded slowly, as if learning to understand something she had long buried inside herself. The real turning point came one crisp morning, when the village gathered for the seasonal fair, a yearly event filled with stalls of honey cakes, wooden toys, dyed ribbons, and bolts of cloth. It was one of those rare days where all the villages nearby mingled, and beauty became a competition of silent glances and subtle judgments. Elena wore her simple wool dress, her hair tied loosely with a thin cord. No pale powder masked her cheeks. No bound linen squeezed her ribs. She felt open. But others did not approve. A group of girls around her age stared openly, their eyebrows plucked razor-thin, their hairlines shaved high and gleaming, their dresses stiffly tightened at the waist. "Look," one whispered loudly enough for her to hear. "She looks like a farmhand." "Her skin is so dark," another added. "She'll never find a suitor like that." Elena felt the sting. Words can wound even when you pretend they cannot, but she forced herself to breathe deeply, letting the air settle her bones. Rowan appeared at her side, holding a cloth dyed the color of evening sky. "Come with me," he said quietly. He led her past the crowd to a quieter corner of the fair where traveling merchants displayed their rare goods, glass beads, polished mirrors, scented herbs, unfamiliar spices. And then she saw it. A small mirror framed in carved walnut. Her reflection stared back at her, unpainted, unbound, unarranged. Raw. Natural. Honest. For years, she had seen her reflection through the expectations of others. This time, she saw herself through her own eyes, and through Rowan's gentle presence beside her. "What do you see?" he asked softly. She hesitated. "Someone who is finally breathing." "And I see someone strong," he whispered. "Someone real." Before she could reply, loud murmurs erupted behind them. The noble procession had arrived. Lady Catherine herself stepped down from a decorated carriage, her attire immaculate, hairline plucked and oiled until it shone, skin dusted with pale powder, eyebrows thin to delicate curves. She was beautiful in the traditional sense, but her eyes were tired, as if she carried the weight of every rule she followed. People bowed. Whispers fluttered. And then her gaze fell on Elena. A flicker of recognition, surprise, curiosity, perhaps even envy, passed across the noblewoman's face. She approached slowly, her gown rustling like paper. "You are the girl from Tarlon River," she said. "The one who refuses our customs." Elena swallowed, heart pounding, but she nodded. "Yes, my lady." Lady Catherine studied her carefully, not unkindly. "You walk freely," she said. "Yes." "You laugh freely." "Yes." "You show your face to the sun." Elena hesitated. "Yes." The noblewoman's expression softened with something unexpected, an emotion Elena couldn't quite name. "My mother bound my waist so tightly for my first presentation," Lady Catherine murmured, "that I fainted within an hour." Elena's breath caught. "I have plucked my forehead for so many years," the noblewoman continued, "that I no longer remember my natural face." The world around them seemed to fade as she whispered, "We follow these rules because we must, or because we fear what happens if we do not. But sometimes I wonder what it would be like to choose." Elena felt her heart tremble with empathy. "You can choose," she said softly. But Lady Catherine smiled with quiet sadness. "Not all of us are as brave as you." Before leaving, she pressed a small velvet pouch into Elena's hand. "For your honesty," she said. "For your courage." Inside was a carved hair comb made of smooth bone, delicate and simple, not a symbol of nobility or beauty, but something deeply personal. As Lady Catherine walked away, Rowan whispered, "You changed something today." Elena shook her head. "I only told the truth." He smiled. "That is what changes everything." The following weeks became a strange, almost magical season of transformation in small, quiet ways. A young girl stopped binding her waist. A mother allowed her daughter to keep her natural brows. A widow stood in the sun without covering her face. Elena never told them what to do. They simply watched her breathe, and remembered that they could, too. But freedom, even when gentle, can cause storms. Some elders complained to the town council. A few men muttered that women were becoming too bold. One merchant refused to sell Elena chalk powder, claiming she was setting a bad example. Yet through all of this, Rowan remained by her side, never pushing, never rushing, always present like a quiet anchor. One evening, as autumn winds softened the air, he walked her home under a sky dusted with stars. "You ever think about the future?" he asked. She smiled. "Only every day." "And what do you see?" She thought for a long moment. "I see a life where I choose who I am," she whispered. "A life where beauty doesn't hurt. A life where I'm not shrinking." Rowan gently reached for her hand. "I hope I'm in that life," he murmured. She felt warmth bloom inside her, not a sudden fire, but a steady, growing light. "You already are," she whispered back. But their quiet happiness would soon face its first true challenge, one that would push Elena further than any beauty rule ever had. A challenge that would test her courage, her choices, and her heart. Because the world does not change without resistance. And freedom, even whispered, can shake the walls of tradition. As winter approached, a decision from the manor arrived that would change everything. A decision that would either break Elena or make her stronger than she ever imagined. But freedom, even when gentle, can cause storms. Some elders complained to the town council. A few men muttered that women were becoming too bold. One merchant refused to sell Elena chalk powder, claiming she was setting a bad example. Yet through all of this, Rowan remained by her side, never pushing, never rushing, always present like a quiet anchor. One evening, as autumn winds softened the air, he walked her home under a sky dusted with stars. "You ever think about the future?" he asked. She smiled. "Only every day." "And what do you see?" She thought for a long moment. "I see a life where I choose who I am," she whispered. "A life where beauty doesn't hurt. A life where I'm not shrinking." Rowan gently reached for her hand. "I hope I'm in that life," he murmured. She felt warmth bloom inside her, not a sudden fire, but a steady, growing light. "You already are," she whispered back. But their quiet happiness would soon face its first true challenge, one that would push Elena further than any beauty rule ever had. A challenge that would test her courage, her choices, and her heart. Because the world does not change without resistance. And freedom, even whispered, can shake the walls of tradition. As winter approached, a decision from the manor arrived that would change everything. A decision that would either break Elena or make her stronger than she ever imagined. Winter settled over the village like a heavy quilt, soft but unyielding. Snow gathered on rooftops and curled against door frames, muffling footsteps and slowing the world into a quiet rhythm. Fires crackled inside cottages, candles flickered at dusk, and the river froze at its edges, turning the familiar landscape into something quiet and glass-like. For most people, winter was a season of stillness. But for Elena, it became the season that would shape the rest of her life. The message arrived on a morning so cold the air felt like it could shatter. A messenger from the manor, wrapped in thick wool and furs, stepped into the village square and called out names. His voice was stern, official, the kind that carried authority even when softened by snow. When he finally spoke Elena's name, her heart sank, not with fear, but with the deep knowing that something long avoided had now arrived at her door. Her mother opened the parchment first. Her hands trembled as she read the wax-sealed message, the color draining slowly from her face. "They want you at the manor," she whispered. "Lady Catherine herself requests your presence." Elena stared at the parchment, her breath fogging the cold air. "Why?" she asked, though a part of her already sensed the answer. Her mother hesitated. "It says your behavior has caused discussion." That word again, discussion. In medieval society, it could mean anything. Curiosity. Judgment. Admiration. Scandal. Envy. Elena slipped her hands into her sleeves and breathed deeply, letting the air settle her nerves. "I'll go," she said. The walk to the manor wound through snow-covered paths lined with bare trees. Each step felt heavier, not because of fear, but because of the weight of expectation, hers, her mother's, the village's, everyone's. She had chosen to live differently, quietly yet firmly, and now the world was responding. When she reached the manor gates, guards ushered her inside. The stone walls held the faint scent of beeswax, cold marble, and old wood. Servants hurried past, their footsteps soft on woven carpets. The place felt ancient and silent, like a library of unspoken stories. Lady Catherine waited for her in a high-ceilinged chamber lit by tall windows. She stood near a table carved with intricate vines, her pale robes draped elegantly over her shoulders. The faint powder on her face gave her an almost ethereal glow, though up close Elena could see the fine cracks in the paint, the tiredness behind her eyes. "You came," Lady Catherine said gently. Elena bowed her head. "You sent for me, my lady." The noblewoman studied her a long moment, her natural hair, her unpainted skin, the absence of bindings around her waist. Then she sighed, a sound that carried years of hidden exhaustion. "You have caused a stir," she said finally. "Some say you are disrespecting tradition. Some say you are foolish. Others say you are dangerous." "Dangerous?" Elena murmured. Lady Catherine stepped closer. "A woman who makes her own choices is always considered dangerous." Elena's breath caught, but not from fear. From recognition. From truth. The noblewoman moved to the window, her voice softer now. "You have become a symbol, though you did not mean to. Young women talk about you. Some imitate you. Mothers question their own habits. Even in the manor, I hear whispers of the girl who walks freely." Elena didn't know what to say. She had never tried to lead anyone. She had simply wanted her breath, her space, her life. "I brought you here," Lady Catherine continued, "for two reasons. First, to ask whether you understand the power of what you are doing. And second." She paused. When she turned back to Elena, her voice lowered to a confession. "To ask how you did it. How you found the strength to break rules born long before either of us." The question stunned her. Not because it wasn't valid, but because Catherine, the noblewoman trapped in endless expectations, was asking her, a village girl, how to breathe. Elena swallowed. "I didn't break the rules," she said quietly. "I just stopped letting them break me." The noblewoman closed her eyes, her breath trembling. Silence filled the chamber, soft, fragile, human. After a long moment, Lady Catherine stepped forward and placed something small in Elena's hand. A folded piece of fine parchment. "This," she said, "is a letter of sanction from the manor. A protection. No one in your village may punish, shame, or penalize you for your choices. You are under my favor." Elena stared at the parchment, stunned. "Why would you give me this?" "Because," the noblewoman whispered, "you are living the life I never could." And with that, the audience ended. The walk home felt different. Snow still fell. Trees still stood bare. But inside her chest, something new fluttered, a sense of possibility, fragile yet growing. Word of the letter spread quickly. Elders grumbled. Gossipers sputtered. Mothers raised eyebrows. Yet no one dared confront her. Instead, they watched her, curious, confused, wondering whether her small act of freedom might hold meaning for them too. Rowan found her at the riverside that evening, where ice floated like glass petals on the water. When she showed him the parchment, his eyes widened in awe. "You did it," he whispered. "No," she said softly. "She did it for herself, too." They sat together on a fallen log, breath forming white clouds in the cold air. "Do you regret anything?" Rowan asked. She thought about it, the pain of years spent shaping herself for others, the quiet rebellion, the consequences. Then she shook her head. I only regret that I waited so long to meet myself, she said. Rowan looked at her with the kind of admiration that felt older than his years. You know, he murmured, every woman in the village is watching you. I don't want them to follow me, she whispered. I just want them to feel free. That, he said gently, is why they will. As winter deepened, more changes happened quietly. Not dramatic, not loud, but steady, like snow melting drip by drip. A young girl wore her natural brows to church. A mother let her daughter laugh loudly at the market. A widow walked without her headscarf on a sunny afternoon. Another girl unbound her waist beneath her cloak. And the whispers changed tone, from judgment to secret admiration. But with change came uncertainty. A council meeting was called to discuss the shifting conduct of the village women. Elena braced herself, waiting for confrontation. Instead, something unexpected happened. Mistress Brune, the same harsh baker's wife who had scolded Elena months ago, stood up and said, "My daughter can finally breathe without fainting. That girl gave her strength." Another mother added, "My niece no longer cries when her brows are plucked. Because she stopped plucking them." A quiet murmur spread. Women who had been silent for years suddenly found their voices, not to cause chaos, but simply to say, "We want to be comfortable. We want to live." No one could revoke the letter from the manor. No one could deny the truth spoken by so many. Change had taken root. By spring, Elena's influence had pierced deeper than she ever intended. People came to her not for advice, but for reassurance. Is it wrong if my daughter doesn't want chalk on her face? Is it shameful if my wife doesn't bind her waist? Will God judge me if I show my hair in the wind? She answered every question with the same gentle, honest words. Beauty is not what hurts you. Beauty is what lets you breathe. One morning, Lady Catherine herself visited the village, without paint on her cheeks, without her forehead thinned, without her elaborate bindings. The villagers gasped. Women stared. Men blinked. But in her eyes, there was a peace that no rule had ever given her. She approached Elena quietly. I wanted to feel the way you do, she whispered. Do you? Yes, the noblewoman said, touching her own cheek. For the first time in years. As spring flowers opened, so did the world around them, not in revolution, not in flames, but in soft, steady breaths. Elena's life slowly blossomed. She helped her mother with weaving. She visited Rowan at the dye yard, where he showed her how colors were coaxed from roots and petals. She grew stronger, calmer, more grounded. And one evening, beneath a sky brushed with the pink of a fading sun, Rowan took her hand and said, "You changed everything. But most of all, you changed me." She smiled softly. I didn't mean to. I know, he whispered. That's why it happened. Years passed. Seasons shifted. Children were born. The village grew. Traditions softened like old fabric washed too many times. And Elena, once a girl who felt shaped by others, became a woman who shaped the quiet courage of her world. When she grew old, her hair silver and soft, her skin marked with gentle lines of laughter and sun, children gathered at her hearth, just as they did in the beginning of this story. She told them softly, in my time, beauty was a cage. We survived it. But I learned something slowly. And the children leaned closer, eyes wide. She smiled, the same smile that once defied an entire village. Beauty is not what people demand from you. Beauty is not pain. Beauty is not silence. Beauty is whatever lets you breathe. Outside, the wind carried her words like seeds into a new world, one where girls were not shaped from the outside, but from the quiet, truthful strength inside their hearts. And that is how one girl, in one small medieval village, changed the meaning of beauty for generations, gently, bravely, simply by choosing to live.